Now back to Senior Matters on the Big Weck.
Welcome back to Senior Matters on the Big Weck. I'm your host, Joe Chili. With us in studio today, Dawn and Jim Nowak, and it's from the Nowak team at Keller Williams. We're talking real estate this morning. I want to welcome you both to the studio.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in and joining us. And I noticed, you folks can't see this at home, but they're dressed very stylishly this morning.
We thought this was TV. This is radio? What's going on?
Oh, I know. Isn't that disappointing? But, the great thing is that you would look so much better on TV than I would. We'd tell the cameraman, just focus on Dawn for the rest of the interview.
Thank you.
So tell us, how did you get interested in real estate?
So in 2005, I became a home stager, and that was before anybody knew what home staging was. I used to explain that to real estate agents. They would hire me. I did that for a decade, and then I owned Western New York Home Staging. And then I decided around 2015 I was going to become a realtor, and I got my real estate license, and I've been a realtor for almost 10 years.
And when you talk home staging, is that when you kind of set up a place for sale? I mean,
Yes.
what is it?
It's funny because everybody that I tell that to, especially if it's a woman, usually goes, "Oh, that looks like so much fun." It is not fun. The before and afters are fabulous. It makes you feel good about what you did. But we had bins of stuff, and we would have to run trucks and hire guys to help us move couches and chairs, and we would set up the main living area, hang curtains and art and everything. It was a lot of work.
All right, so we've got a little bit of background on you, Dawn. Now, Jim, how did you get involved? It's my understanding you did something else for a living, and now was it that Dawn kind of browbeated you into doing this?
Oh, no, you're right. You're right, Joe. I mean, actually, my career is with the newspaper business, about 35 years with that. And then I recently retired and found out that Dawn's just been so busy with real estate that she pulled me out of retirement, and now I'm working for her.
See, that's a great thing because it's kind of like, Jim, you're not going to be sitting around the house now. We've got a lot of work to do.
Oh, he did that for about 6 months, and I'm like, okay, this is enough.
That's great. I think that we can all understand that. So we heard how you got involved, and I think one of the things that I think about, and I found this out, being a senior, with my older parents that are now since gone, downsizing, smart sizing, whatever you want to call it. Very difficult thing, but at some point you have that home that you lived in that you just don't need anymore, right? I mean, it's just all this extra space, and you probably want to live smarter, but you collect all these things during the course of your life. Do you advise people on how to do this and how to downsize?
Yes, so downsizing is one of the categories. There's actually 4 categories. There's also clients that want to go into senior living, like a 55-plus community, or independent living, or move in with their kids. Then the third category would be like if they want to actually leave New York and go to another state. There's relocation involved with that, which we also can assist with. And then the last one is estate sales, if somebody unfortunately passes away, and then usually their children will call us in to help with that.
It's so difficult because I know, one of the big things when we started to downsize is like, oh, I'm sure somebody is going to want this dining room set. We spent so much money on it. It's great. And it was like, well, none of the kids want the dining room set. Nobody else really, you know what I mean? So it's some of the things that you treasure, or, you may hold a value to because of sentimental reasons, but it may not be somebody else's thing. What about, Dawn, how do you deal with individuals that'll say, wow, I can make a lot of money on my house selling right now. Maybe it's a good market or something like that. But are you spending that much more money to get into another home that may be smaller or, comparable?
So it depends on why they're wanting to move. That's part of like the first step is I sit down with them and I find out what their motivation is, what their timeline is. If they're living in a 3-story house, a colonial, and they're also living in the basement, and they maybe are having, some problems medically, and they want a 1 level, or they want to be closer to the grandkids and the kids, and they want to, go to the baseball games. And so it depends on, why they're moving.
And is it something that, do you have to, you're dealing with not only individuals that may be thinking of moving, but maybe children, right? So suppose you, and have you ever had a situation where you're sitting in a room and you've got the individuals that own the house, you have the children, and you're talking to them about it, and then the parents say, well, I didn't really want to move in the first place.
To answer your question, yes. There's usually one of the children are usually more involved than the others. Every once in a while, you'll have two of the siblings that usually they work well together. It seems like it works out. But if the client does not want to move, there's other ways to stay in the house. Like there's, grab bars by the shower. Again, it depends on why they want to move to begin with. And what the solution is for that. And
you work with we're talking, basically about seniors at this point, but you work with all ages, individuals.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Our youngest was 21 up to 90s. Yeah.
And I still remember, and it was a number of years ago, and I bought my first home. It was pretty exciting, at the time. Right. And then, the excitement kind of wears off. And then, as with anything, and then at the time that you think of buying another home, you think, okay, do I want to buy? What do I want to do? And at that point, you're married. I bought my first home when I was single. But, then you're married, and then there's someone else who's getting involved in the whole situation. And, and that's great. And I kind of left it up to my wife because I thought, for me, I could live in a shoebox. It's terrible for me to say, right? But is that a situation for a lot of men that you deal with? How do you find the dynamic between husband and wife that are looking at a house?
The best way to do that, honestly, is to give them each a sheet of paper and say, write down your 5 must-haves separately. You don't use the same sheet of paper. They each have to turn their backs to each other and write it down and see if they're on the same page, literally. So that's really the best way. And then we have to figure out what's the most important of these top 5 for each of you and what can either of you compromise on. In this market, the way it's been obvious. I don't know. I'm sure you guys know it's been a huge seller's market.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that means supply's low, demand's high. So there's not as many to pick from. But that's usually what we do is we just ask them what's most important to you. And then we kind of put them all in the search. And then whatever they want to see, we go see and somebody compromises.
All right. So let's put Jim on the spot. Jim, when it came time to buy a house, here we go. When it came time to buy a house, was it your idea or was it your wife's idea? And how did she convince you?
Dawn is pretty convincing. So, but now she, it goes back to her home staging. She has a vision for what a home should look like. So, she sold me on that, and she knows her colors, her styles, and she can make lemonade out of lemons.
So what was if you had to get a house? What was the one necessity, the one thing that you had to have in a house, Jim?
Oh, of course. I want to have a man cave in the in the basement with my Buffalo Bills stuff.
For those of you, because you can't see this, Don immediately started pointing down. Downstairs in the basement. So does he get banished to the man cave often?
No, he had in our very first home, we've lived 5 houses. In our very first home, he had a man cave, and we were down there quite a bit, but our house was small. Our last few houses have been a decent size. I didn't think it was necessary. We're actually finishing our lower level right now. So
that's good.
Larry Bird's poster will be up or something, I'm sure, right?
Senior Matters on the Big Weck is brought to you by Independent Health. The Red Shirts are all about your health. And PB Elder Law, Buffalo's trusted elder law firm. We're talking today to the Dawn Nowak team. No, Nowak. I apologize if I'm saying this differently because I know people that have the same last name, but it's pronounced differently.
Nowak.
And DawnSoldAnother.com is your website, right? Yes. Which is great. Also, and it's Dawn and Jim here that we're talking to today. And how should people reach out to you? Probably the best way to do it in the last few minutes of the show. How should people reach out to you in the event that they want to sell? And is there pressure to sell, or are you just helping them go through the process?
Absolutely no pressure. The way you could reach out to me is you could either call me at 716-288-6881, or you can go to DawnSoldAnother.com. And basically, when I talk to somebody, I do what's best for the client. And this is going to sound like I'm being like so hokey, but I am not. If it's not best for the client to sell, we do not sell that house. I mean, I will talk to them, and sometimes we'll start with people. In 2018, we just had one actually. In 2018, I had somebody that came up to me, was talking about selling, and we ended up giving her some suggestions on how they could stay in their home. And they just literally closed this year, a few months back. So she finally broke her hip, and it was a 2-story, and she had to. But she stayed in that house an extra 4 years. There's no pressure on that. To me, it doesn't matter. Whenever you're ready. And I try to help them make that decision and guide through the steps. And usually there's stuff you could do even if it's 2 years prior, like start emptying stuff out, or having your kids come and get their stuff out of your basement, or, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and your kids may not want that Christmas china set that you bought all those years ago.
Yeah, an estate sale is a great way. I actually think one of the things, not the downsizing one, but for the rest of the categories, know where you're going to want to go, and then get all set up and moved in, and then have an estate sale with whatever you leave behind, do some cleaning up, maybe a little painting, and then we sell the house.
All right. DawnSoldAnother.com is the website. And Dawn and Jim, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Senior Matters. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Joe.